It's episode 68 of the LOTD pod, the Left of the Dial podcast. It's part two of our David Bowie fantasy draft, where we will be picking songs from, you might have guessed, David Bowie.
We're going into the deep end of the pool. We started off with a dozen, and I think each of us. Richard has a dozen, you have a dozen, I have a dozen. I think we covered off on the stuff that has to be there, and now we're gonna see. Now we're gonna see what we're really made of. We're going into the deep end of the pool on the David Bowie catalog. I think we're gonna strike gold. It remains to be seen, but I like where this is going.
And again, we're joined by our friend Richard Shirk, and his song "The Time Worm" kicks us off right now. Episode 68 of the Left of the Dial. We now refer to it as the LOTD pod, and it's episode 68 and part two of our David Bowie fantasy draft. We completed round one a week ago and did the first 12 rounds of the draft.
I'm proud of our work, I have to say. I think we came on like we're casual, but I think the actual, in the heat of battle, I don't think any of this stuff is casual. I think things were getting real there at the end, and I think they're about to get very real as we get into the back half of the Bowie draft. I think we each have 14 picks left, and I think we've done a pretty good dip into the highlights. Now we're going to separate the amateurs from the professionals. I'm excited.
I can't wait. Yeah. As a guest, this is Richard Shirk, the guest star of episode 60.
You're on every episode, Richard. You gave us our theme song. You're no guest.
Right.
You may know me.
You're basically as much a part of it as either of us at this point.
My heart is, without exaggerating, warmed.
Well, I mean, and you are, let's be honest, Flick, you and I like Bowie, but the real subject matter expert here clearly is Richard. Like, clearly, this is a catalog master. So this is where he's going to, I have a feeling if we're going to separate the pros from the amateurs, there's no chance that Richard doesn't get separated out in the pro categories.
Richard's list is very much the deep cut list at this point. We'll see if it ends up that way, but at this point, Richard's list is totally deep cuts.
You guys flatter me, and I'm just pleased to be here.
Well, you're running the clinic. I say we keep things hot, and I think we can jump right in. We're going to do the same order, Mr. Flick.
Yeah, and let's just run through our where we stand on our obligations. So we have certain guidelines, certain parameters that we're fulfilling for each decade. Like, for instance, we each have to represent one song from the 60s Bowie studio albums. I fulfilled that obligation. I have 7 songs from the 70s. There are no minimums for the 70s. There's a maximum. You can have no more than 12 from one decade. I'm well on my way to that. And I have 2 songs from the 80s. You have to have 3. I have 1 song from the 90s. I have not yet gone into the new millennium. That is not a comment on how I feel about the material from the new millennium. But so far, I haven't picked anything yet from the 2000s.
That's a daring approach here, although maybe not in the sense that I still have a 90s, an aughts, and a teens to go. And I freely admit, like, I didn't listen to it in its time. Most of my stuff that I like from that era, I had to go back and find. I don't think I'm the first person in the world to suggest that his output in the 90s and the aughts in particular took some work at the time to get into, although he was ahead of everybody. Let's be honest. Like, at the time, it wasn't a huge hit, but going back, again, I don't think there's any of that stuff that didn't need to get made. So this is going to be a little tougher one for me. How are you doing on I got my 60s. I'm not worried about 80s or 70s. How are you hanging for the back half, the back
You know,
nine?
I think I'm jumping around a little bit more than you guys. So I have
Yeah.
the 60s taken care of. I have my 3 rarities, which, that's minimum. So maybe I'll go a little crazy. And I've got 1 of 2 from the teens, 1 of 2 from the aughts, 1 of 2 from the 90s, and I'm only 1 of 3 from the 80s. So yeah, really great list. I'm keeping track of what you guys are throwing down, and each one is just a really great mixtape on its own.
We have not done any covers yet, and I have a feeling this is going to be key because we don't have to do covers, do we, Mr. Flick? But we can.
No, it's a maximum, not a minimum. There's a maximum of 3.
All right. Well, we've done 0 so far. We'll see who breaks the seal on the covers.
Okay, well, Richard, we'll start things off and with round 13.
Round 13, guys. So in case you didn't tune in to the last episode, I ended with Because You're Young from Scary Monsters. And, 80s. 80s were kind of tough for me. And that is the first one. I'm going to have to go with... I don't love this track, but it kind of grows on you if you give it the time, which is Loving the Alien from Tonight.
No, that is on my you know what, if you're having a fire sale on the 80s, that's one of the first you run in to get. I don't think there's any way around that.
Yeah, and
you know what, I'm just going to throw this out there, and you can feel free to take me up on it if you want, but I had it on my list because there's a good live version of it on Live Reality. And so if not, if I didn't end up getting Blue Jean from that album, I was going to take the live version of Loving the Alien from Live Reality. So you're totally entitled to do the same thing if you want.
The chorus is prime.
Yeah.
Yeah. It does show how good of a song that actually is, but the production on that album is just god awful, and I don't know what else to say. It's really mucked up in that production on the Tonight album.
Richard, do you agree with that? Do you think their production is bad? Maybe this is a common narrative. I don't recall the 80s records being dissed just for their production this hard, but you guys are going in pretty good on the 80s production stuff. Is it the whole EMI catalog you're dissing, or what is it?
For me, I don't mind it as much. I mean, there are other things that I do mind, just like bad choices and such. But I was talking to someone about this, and Bowie's not the kind of guy that's going to come into the studio with another side of Bob Dylan, and he's not going to record it in 2 nights with some Beaujolais. It's he's very much a collaborator and relies on the producers that he trusts at the time and his sidemen that he trusts at the time. And sometimes, like with Ziggy, that's what makes it classic, and other times maybe it didn't work out to be the best thing. And I think being state of the art in each of these decades means that listening to it now, like 30 years later, and especially in the 90s, I think the 90s stuff has aged the least gracefully. So yeah, we'll circle back to that when we get.
Yeah, we have to talk about that later, because again, I think we were all sold that dance music was inevitable during the 90s, and electronic music was inevitable, and I think we all fell for like a head fake. And I think he fell for one too, but we'll save that for later.
We'll get to that, and I'm sure Reeves Gabriel is a nice guy.
We are going to have an opportunity to talk about Reeves Gabriel later.
I'm gonna close out the 80s with Cat People putting out fire with gasoline.
Well, okay, so actually you don't have that pick yet, because you closed out the last show with your 12th pick, and then you have the 13th pick starting, and so then you'll come around to have 14 and 15.
I will do Scout's honor here. It was safe from me. Although, again, I'm the fan of the Let's Dance album. I believe it's on that album too, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
Right.
I think it was a highlight of that album. So I will not pick it, but you can certainly have it when the time comes.
You're a gentleman, Rudy.
I try. Flick, were you going to compete for that one, considering how bad you dissed Let's Dance in the EMI catalog?
No. No, but yeah, I am going to take the note on the 90s stuff boy, I keep on thinking maybe it isn't time to do this yet, but maybe it is. The 90s are tough. I'm gonna go ahead and take 7 Years in Tibet and close out the 90s. So I'm done with the 90s. So I'm done with the 90s. 7 Years in Tibet is from Earthling, so that gives me 2 from the 90s. And let me see, how many different studio albums do I have now? I have 12. So I have 12 of 18 albums required to represent here.
All right, I'm going to duck back into the 70s here. I'm going to go to Lodger. I'm going to grab the first cut from Lodger, Fantastic Voyage. I'm a fan of the Berlin stuff, and I think Lodger gets a bit of a drubbing here and there. I think that's unfair. I don't think any of those albums are... I don't think there's any reason to apologize for loving any of them. I know they're not for everybody. And then I'm going to close out my 80s. Somebody mentioned Reeves Gabriel. I don't know, like in the late 80s, that's when you started to see those news stories, those like human interest stories on the news where like too many kids were hanging out in front of like the 7-Eleven. So the crafty owner of the 7-Eleven would put up a speaker and play like classical music to make the kids not want to hang around. I think they could have done that with the Tin Machine record and more successfully run the youth of the day off. That said, Under the God has a great video. And I don't go back and listen to the song so much on its own. It's not necessarily prime Bowie, but the video is fantastic and the song makes way more sense in the context of that video. So out of deference and love for David Bowie's made some great videos and he's made some terrible videos. This is one of those weird instances where he made a great video for a song that not everybody would consider a classic. But if there was any statement of the Tin Machine ethic that I think works, it's the Under the God video with that performance of that song. So I'm gonna grab that. So at least somebody gets Tin Machine on there. I don't know if I have a very hard time believing that I've just taken a pick off the board for either of you. I'm going to take one for the team here and go for Under the God on Tin Machine.
All right. Well, you know what? I wasn't going to do this anytime soon, but I feel like, okay, so I really hadn't paid much attention to the Tin Machine stuff whatsoever before doing this draft. I remember like when the first Tin Machine album was out and seeing, I think they were on Letterman probably, and I saw them on Letterman. And just really, for one thing, I didn't like the way it looked. It looked like David Bowie was trying to be in Duran Duran, and he was playing like a guitar that doesn't have, a pegboard, which I never like. I always hated that style of guitar. So I really didn't like the way it looked. But, I can't say that I gave Tin Machine its day in court until doing the homework for this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say that there is a song on the first Tin Machine album called Bus Stop that I absolutely love. Love that song. And I'm going to go ahead and take it, even though this technically closes me out on the 80s, but I haven't picked anything from Scary Monsters yet. So I'm probably going to actually go a little extra on the 80s.
Really?
But
Bus Stop is also the shortest song. Yeah.
Yeah, Bus Stop is a great song, though. And honestly, I feel like the Tin Machine stuff got kind of an unfair rap. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as it was made out to be.
Somewhere the Tin Machine fan club is listening.
And you're right, yeah.
I could, if you were interested in that record, if you waited about
Giving
2
it
weeks,
moderate praise.
it was available in every cutout bin at every Best Buy in America, I think, within 60
Yeah,
days of its launch. So,
but you know what? I mean, that means about as much as the Spotify top streaming songs
whoa.
as we always argue about. Because the thing about it is of course the industry hated Tin Machine because it for one thing it wasn't called David Bowie and Tin Machine. So they had to figure out how to sell this like side project that he was doing. But if you compare it to the the I feel like to me the low point in his career as far as his solo albums, the Tin Machine albums are between Never Let Me Down and Black
Black tie,
Tie.
white. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he was so much more into the Tin Machine stuff. Like the enthusiasm seems to be so much more present than was on because like Never Let Me Down and Black Tie I think are just that's the bottom end of the David Bowie catalog. So at least in contrast to that, the Tin Machine stuff ends up looking much better than that.
He was trying to jumpstart. He was looking for something. There's no doubt about it. I think he was searching. It was something that he didn't really have in his catalog. He went a direction with it that not much of his other stuff does. They can't all be winners.
And I think it kind of circles back to my number 2 pick, which was You've Got a Habit of Leaving by Davy Jones in Lower Third, where like I think he really wanted to be like part of a band like the Kinks, like a cool little mod band where everyone's chipping in. And it just happened that he got success as a solo artist and never really got to experience success as part of a band. And I think he really wanted that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure he was hounded, why not at least call it David Bowie and Tin Machine, but it's kind of cool they stuck to his guns on that.
All right, Mr. Richard, you're up.
Okay. Circling back to my false start with the album Let's Dance, I'm going to go to Cat People, Putting Out Fire, which I don't think I ever really got to like until it was in Inglourious Bastards by Quentin Tarantino. And yeah, it's a weird song. I don't listen to it a lot, but it's operatic, it's interesting. And on that record, I think it's like the third, for me, like 3 or 4 really strong tunes.
Yeah, I think I'm not trying to say that Let's Dance is a great album per se. It's a little different from that album, but I like what it does. It breaks it up a little bit. I think if you have even half an interest in that album, it's welcome.
Cool. Yeah, it's a weird one, and I think that closes out my 80s picks. And do I have another pick, guys?
Yeah, you do.
You do. My spreadsheet just crashed. My beautiful spreadsheet.
Oh my God, what are we gonna do?
Your Pablo Picasso spreadsheet.
That's right. The Blue Period spreadsheet. So actually, I need to recap because I just recovered it, but I am missing Rudy's picks.
You mean they didn't immediately stick in your brain as genius? I took Fantastic Voyage from Lodger, and I took Under the God from the Tin Machine debut.
Okay. All right. And what did you just pick, Richard?
I just picked Putting Out Fire from
Okay, right. Cat People. All right.
Yeah, you got it. And I'm gonna pick another 90s tune. And this was kind of a fun one to find because the 90s were really tough for David Bowie, and I feel like he and a lot of other people, to give him credit, are looking to maybe like the wrong people to kind of guide him in his direction, and so they end up listening to Prodigy and stuff like that, which I was there, and I remember that being kind of exciting at the time. And David Bowie was there, and he's recording albums, and I wasn't. So who's to say what could have happened? So my gut initially wanted me to put down I'm Afraid of Americans, because I think for a lot of like really impressionable kids, that came out when I was like maybe 17, 18. And I think a lot of kids my age got to know it because it had a big MTV video, and everyone knew who Trent Reznor was from Nine Inch Nails, who produced that.
Yep.
And it's kind of an interesting song, but I can't listen to it. It's just like the Trent Reznor of it is too much for me right now. And so I went back to Hours, and I found a tune called What's Really Happening from Hours, which I like. And going back to our Tin Machine discussion, this is another jam where Reeves Gabriel is the person on guitar, and despite that, it's an okay tune. I'll leave it's okay.
Wow. I know you're not dissing Prodigy's Fat of the Land. I know you wouldn't do that.
I am, yeah, a little bit.
Whoa.
So where do you
time, but hasn't aged well.
What? It's because it's a punk record played. I'm sorry, Flick. The reason everybody was being told electronic music is the future, then Fat of the Land came out and everybody got onto it. Fat of the Land is not electronic music. It's a punk album played on electronic instruments. And from then on, it couldn't be retrieved. It's a great punk record, but if you lump it in with if you play it side by side with the Chemical Brothers, whatever, it doesn't.
Yeah, and I've got some other issues with it, and I used to listen to it as a youngster, but I just can't get behind the B word stuff.
Sure. That yep.
Makes me feel
gross. And Cool Keith has done worse. So I mean, by his standards, it's tame. But yes, it's problematic to be sure.
And I think that there was some really good stuff that came out of bands using electronic bits and looking to bands like Underworld and more arty groups that became popular. So I mean, like the direction that Radiohead went in after imbibing a lot of the early bits of that, and then spitting it back out with like Kid A. There was some good things, there were some bad things, and it had to happen, and it did.
Flick, are you down for an Underworld draft show? I think me and Richard could do it. How about you? Big fan?
Yeah, I don't know. That would. I don't think there's enough to draft from, is there?
Whoa! Ooh, that's gonna leave a mark. All right, it's your turn, Flick.
Okay, and I'm sorry. What was the song again?
What's Really Happening from Hours.
Okay.
And that closes out my 90s selection.
All right. Well, actually, you didn't need a 90s song anymore.
Well, there you go.
So
he went. Look, he's the super fan. He's the only person that any of us know who could go deep on Bowie in the 90s.
You
got to let it go. I think that has to stand.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a high skill maneuver. That's a high risk, high reward maneuver. He pulled it off.
So Stevie Ray Vaughan or Reeves Gabriel's? Richard.
I can't.
I have to go with Reeves.
I can't believe I'm hearing this. All right.
I know, and I've Stevie Ray Vaughan, from what I understand, was a really nice guy, and like we've talked about before, my family has a history with Bill Graham, and that is a real tragedy that that they died like they did, but yeah, I can't. The blues guitar solos are worse than like the kind of like 90s effects pedal stuff. So, and that's just my personal taste, but
as far as blues playing goes, that's a lot of what Mick Ronson was doing, though, but just with the wah-wah effect, enhancing it,
Yeah, and it was like, obviously when you go to British rock and roll of the 60s, it's all blues, and that is so cool because they're taking it right from the source. Um, you know, th- they're playing Howlin' Wolf covers, and that's how they get started. And so that really gritty 60s British blues, I think, is a lot more compelling for me than like really clean, well produced 80s Texas blues
Are you
playing.
sure you guys aren't confusing Stevie Ray Vaughan with the Fabulous Thunderbirds or something?
Well, I mean, I love Stevie Ray Vaughan, so I'm not I'm not dissing him. It's not the best fit. Like I don't think him and Bowie were this combination that was destined to work together for a long period of time, which they didn't.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Mick Ronson, obviously, and Adrian Bello, I guess, if I had to pick sidemen. And then I think in later periods, Earl Slick shows up on a lot of albums that I like. And Carlos Alomar, too.
Yeah, Carlos Alomar definitely plays a huge part.
You're the
Especially,
guitar man, Richard. I'm gonna go back and listen. I'm gonna try to see it from your point of view. But I may ask you to listen. Flick, do you like Stevie Ray Vaughan's the version of Superstition he does, the cover of
oh
Stevie
yeah,
Wonder? All right,
yeah.
I might try to slip that to Richard and see what he thinks.
Again, I have no disses on Stevie Ray Vaughan. I like Stevie Ray Vaughan, so it it's not me. It's I like him. I like him quite a bit. Like when I was especially in my early days of playing guitar, like Stevie Ray Vaughan played a big part in that. Not that I could do it, he did. He was kind of extraordinary. Okay, so you know, I don't need anything else from the 80s, but again, I don't have Scary Monsters represented, and I'm going to take the title track here.
Mhm. Wow, I'm afraid I might have to go double dip on that record just because there's stuff we're leaving behind. Like,
Yeah, there's still good stuff out there on Scary Monsters. I especially like the title track, so I wanted to make sure it's on my list, even though I don't need to bother with the 80s anymore.
Yeah, It's No Game is, I think, like Tin Machine Under the God. I should have just picked It's No Game because It's No Game fulfilled what I think Under the God was trying to do. That's a tough one. And fashion, we're going to have a draft without fashion making the list. I don't know if I can live with that. All right, I'm going to quick go here. In that vein of Under the God, It's No Game, the little noisy end of things, I'm going to do the first. I think I'm breaking the seal on covers, and I'm going to go for the live version, although I think it would count. I think it's on pinups, but I'm not sure. Is from the Bowie at the Beeb compilation. I'm a big fan of that version he does of Waiting for the Man. And the connection with Lou is well known throughout his career. But as much of an original as David Bowie was, and I'm not trying to hot take David Bowie here, but there is. I don't know how much of the David Bowie we love exists if the Velvet Underground doesn't happen first.
Right.
He does have. He has
yeah,
he has a precursor. Bowie
yeah, it
has
would have
precursor.
been more of the Anthony Newley type of David Bowie, I think, without that.
Right, but the fact that he could do both.
I mean, without that and the combination of T-Rex, I think T-Rex is and it the Stooges too. The Stooges and Lou and T-Rex, I think, are a big part of the mix there.
Yeah, I know that we associate punk with the UK, and that's fine. It's not an argument that I think can ever be settled. But to me, Iggy Pop and certainly the White Light, White Heat album, we didn't call it punk at that time, and we didn't call that stuff glam at that time. I don't think. I think glam kind of comes with Bowie, but they all have precursors. And the fact that he never hid that, I don't think he'd be embarrassed at all for having that laid on him. And then I'm going to grab from Changes Now Bowie, which is a compilation from 2020. I should have read more about it. I don't know exactly the history. Changes Now Bowie does have a cover of White Light, White Heat on it. But I'm picking Shopping for Girls from Changes Now Bowie, and I'm going to have to cheat here and look at what original album that was on.
That was a Tin Machine, wasn't it?
No. Really?
Yeah, I think that's the second Tin Machine album. Let me check.
Oh my goodness. Well, then I'm going to have to bite my tongue. I'm going to have to go on eBay and pay like $300 for a Tin Machine tour shirt as to sort of cleanse my sins. Maybe I'll get lucky and the second Tin Machine record isn't on.
Yeah, it is Tin Machine 2. So you're representing Tin Machine 2 with that.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, then I made some mistakes here today, and I'm willing to own that. But the version of that on the Changes Now Bowie, I think is spectacular. I really like whatever that album is, whatever Changes Now Bowie originally was. I really dig it. I'm going to pick that as a rarity or a live. I don't know.
Well, no, you represent the 90s with it because it originally appeared on Tin Machine 2.
Which is kind of a deep cut because from what I can tell on Spotify, maybe Tin Machine 2 has been deleted.
Yeah, I couldn't find Tin Machine 2, which is again I shouldn't have been looking. Maybe that's why I don't know. But boy, I dig that.
It's on YouTube. I listened to it on YouTube.
All right, well, bite my tongue. Well, I'm so glad you figured that out for me, Flick, because now I'm done with the 90s. Woo! Yep. Give that one a try and give the whole Changes Now Bowie. It's only been out, I don't know, not even a year. And I don't know the history of it, but the song mix is pretty interesting and all of his live records is. And before I sign off here on this turn, I have noticed that a ton of archival live stuff has started to show up on Spotify from him from all these different tours, and we probably could have done just a live Bowie draft. That's the other thing. For him to be able to bring it live like that as often as he did for as long as he did, is really in very elite company.
Yeah.
Very, very elite company.
Well, Waiting for the Man was another one that was on my rarities list that you sniped from me, but that's okay because I still have a few more.
Yeah, you should not run out of source material.
But
Bowie at the Beeb especially is like goldmine for
yeah, although the Santa Monica live version of Waiting for the Man is the one I would have gone with. Okay, so I am going to go with the rarity here, which will be my second. And so since this was single only, this never appeared on a studio album, it will fall under rarities, which is John, I'm Only Dancing.
That's a great one.
And that is that's my 16th round pick, my second rarity.
You got 10 to go, son.
Oh, and I have to specify that there were two different single versions of that, correct, Richard? It's like two different. The version that I'm going with again changes. Bowie Changes was the first thing I owned. So the version of it that's on that album, I don't really know how to distinguish one from the other than to. I know it when I hear it, but I don't. I think there were two different versions of it that were both released as a single, as an A side. So,
wow, yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that one. You may have me there.
Is there a better greatest hits record than Changes one, Bowie?
I think. I mean, was that the first Bowie record for all of you guys? It was the first one for me.
Yeah.
It's a very short list in terms of like just Bob Dylan's first greatest hits is all killer, no filler. But I mean, that Changes one Bowie is every kid going to the minute you turn 13, you should be issued that record. I think to this day.
Yeah, let's make that happen.
Done.
Let's see. Am I up, guys?
Yep.
Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm gonna go back to the aughts, guys. Yeah, that's a good idea.
We're following you because you'd know.
And I think Looking for Water is a really strong track from Reality. And you know, it's solid tune, and then it kind of plays into the Man Who Fell to Earth kind of mythology, and yeah, I love it, and that's my pick.
Fantastic. I think you have another, does he not, Mr. Flick?
Yep, okay. That's for sure.
And just riffing on on the covers, I kind of forgot to look at pinups, but pinups is really fun.
Yeah.
And another one that you just really need to have on LP for the art. The kind of like creepy mask delineation. And I'm going to go with the Bowie cover of "See Emily Play," early Pink Floyd
Bold.
cover, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where his start was not meteoric. It was lots of scraping by with like really small club gigs and playing with a lot of the early bands, and they all went on to be like huge immediately, like Pink Floyd, but he was kind of stuck in like the stuck as the support act. And so pinups is really fun to track down all the sources for these, because you have the Pretty Things, Easy Beats, Kinks, early Pink Floyd, all sorts of cool bands that were contemporaries of his when he was in the mod scene.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah, the Pinups album is a bit uneven, but there are some really good ones on there. And you mentioned, the See Emily Play is one I really like, and I really like Friday on My Mind by the Easy Beats. That cover, that's probably my favorite one off there. And I'm I'm going to say that because I feel safe that I don't have to worry about defending that territory, because I'm really good as far as completing or representing the different solo albums. We need to represent 18 different albums, and so far I have 14. So I only have 4 more albums that I have to pick from, and fulfilling my decade obligations will pretty much take care of that. But I haven't gone into the aughts yet, and I'm going to go ahead and do that now. From Reality, I'm going to go New Killer Star.
I don't know that one. Was that a single, or are you going deep cuts?
I don't think it was a single, but I'm not good at knowing what the singles are. But I will get back to you.
It's a solid track. I remember. I can't hum it for you right now, but I'm going to mute and listen to it just for a second.
All right.
Yeah, it was actually my favorite track off the album. So Days was also on my list, which Rudy has. But New Killer Star, it's the opening track, and I think maybe it was a single. Let me see here.
I had to grab Days early because I thought for sure I was very worried I was not going to get anything from that era, and I do think that is a fantastic song.
Yeah,
I went early, but
I'm confirming it was a single.
Nice. All right, I'm going to go for it. This is cheap heat, as they say in the professional wrestling world. I'm going to go to The Next Day, and I'm going to grab Where Are We Now, which I liked The Next Day quite a bit, but I think Where Are We Now was like the preview track or the first single from it, and it really struck me. It's really it's the song is there, but the performance, there's a melancholy to it, which that's not he doesn't sing from that. You know what I mean? Like he's not Robert Smith. You know what I mean? Like he has lots of different faces, obviously, and there's like it's not crooning, it's not, but it's there's a certain voice he has in it, and there's just a certain delivery that it really stuck in my ears, and I thought it was fantastic. I think that kills my aughts. I'm sorry, that kills my teens.
Your teens, yeah.
And then I'm going to kill my aughts here by grabbing. I think Heathen's a pretty good record. I had a couple I could choose from there, but I'm going to take Everyone Says Hi. I think it's 2002. There's at least 3 or 4 songs in there that I think I could pick. I went with Everyone Says Hi, but I think you could throw a dart at that track list, and you have a pretty good chance of hitting something. I'm not sad I picked that one.
All right. Well, you have your decade requirements all met.
Right, now I can take electives the rest of the way. Now I can black pill everything.
No, you do have to represent a certain amount of studio albums. I'm not sure if you're there yet.
I'll get there.
You have 15 different studio albums, so you have to represent 3 more, but they can be from any decade.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm
So,
good. So I can
yeah.
still get Dancing in the Street on? I'm sorry, did I say that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, you know you know your competition here. You know I'm not going to fight you for it.
I know you're a big Mick Jagger fan. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I am going to stay with yeah, I'm gonna stay. No, I'm gonna go to the teens. I haven't gone to the teens yet. I'm gonna take the title track from the next day.
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Yeah, really scary tune.
Yeah, and a really good album. I wish I would have paid this more attention at the time. Kind of going back over it now, I realize that was I would say that's at least top 20 for the decade. I think
That's a bold statement, Flick.
that is a bold statement. Maybe not top 20, top 20, top 30. I think easily.
That's less bold, but it is bold.
Yeah, I backed off a little bit.
Yeah, returning to producing with Tony Visconti, and that album was recorded in complete secrecy, as was Black Star. And yeah, just having it like show up as a new release without any advance notice, that was really cool. I such a classy way to bookend his discography with those 2 records.
Yeah, he had a great run there at the end of his life. I think going back to Heathen. I don't know. Maybe some would argue that it goes back further than that, or maybe not as far back. But that's where I think his great end run started.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah. And I think I'm up. Is that
Yep.
You are.
Yep. I'm going to close out the 2010s with another track from the next day, which is The Stars Are Out Tonight. Like, that's just such a classic tune. And if it wasn't a single, it should have been.
Looking at that album, it's a pretty good record. I know I'm not the first to say that, but
it's okay. Yeah, no, it's
a pretty good album.
Yeah, and it's fun, and I like going back to the cover art, which I've been kind of talking about a lot during these past 2 shows. I think that's such a good. It's a kind of like representative of what he was doing, where he didn't want to. I read part of an interview where he talks to someone. He's like, I don't know how Mick Jagger sings Brown Sugar every night, for like the past 50 years. I just, he really needs to be moving forward and making new stuff. So by kind of like defacing the cover of Heroes is it's exactly, such a great emblem of his artistic kind of mission. Is he's going to keep going forward, and at this point it was really elegant to say that he's going to put out his last few records and not have to kind of rest on his legacy.
Yeah, although that cover really threw me for a loop, because you think that somehow it is related to Heroes, like it is some kind of continuation of it or something. So yeah, it's maybe a bit tough to read that cover, but yeah, a lot of different interpretations. I guess you might not end up with the correct one.
Do I get another pick, guys?
Yes.
Man, I'm such.
And Richard, do you know where you are as far as how many different studio albums you have at this point?
I don't, but I kind of tallied it up when I was putting together my source playlist that I'm going off of. So I'm pretty confident myself. And I'm gonna add another one to the bucket too with so we did TVC 15, we did DJ, And I think a third part of that is going to be V2 Schneider.
Ooh, that's great. That was
From
that's on
Heroes.
mine. That's great.
Which
yeah,
is
the reference to Florian Schneider of Kraftwerk.
exactly. And so his being in Berlin with Eno, and then later when he's making the two Iggy Pop records at Hansa Studios, and just soaking up all the cool things that are happening, including Kraftwerk, and then kind of chopping up what he's hearing and putting it on his records. V2 Schneider, any day.
Okay, so yes, I think where you're at right now, but you want to double check this. My quick math on it is that you have 14 different studio albums on your list so far.
He should be able to count Outside twice.
Like Combat Duty, right?
That's correct. He got it on there, and he got it on legit.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I need one more from the teen, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out now. From Black Star, I'm going to take I Can't Give Everything Away.
All right, I think I just have to satisfy the albums at this point. So I better just take two fairly safe choices, although I don't think either of these are singles. I didn't get anything from Station to Station, so I'm going to take Stay. And I'm going to take Black Country Rock from Man Who Sold the World. I think that means I only need one more album, and then I can do whatever's left as electives. It's very exciting for me.
Okay. All right, Black Country Rock. All right. So I'm going to just go ahead and this will be the last of my requirements I have to fulfill as far as decades goes and albums. So this will be my 18th different album. I have to go back to the odds. And from Heathen, I'm going to take Slip Away.
Interesting. But Heathen's good. I might actually have to buy Heathen. It's pretty late in the game for this, but I may have to do it.
I think you can find it.
It's still possible.
Yes.
They do still print
Is that copies.
True? Can do it. You can go out there and get it.
The wonders never cease.
I will tell you. I will tell you this. Going back to the Tin Machine thing, I got a copy of Tin Machine off of eBay this past week. So.
Really? Did they pay you to take it, or?
I'm just going back to like the fan club and how they're like, yes, we sold another one.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, Bus Stop is worth the admission for me. I totally love that song.
But you didn't tell what the price of admission was here, because I'm guessing the shipping cost more than the record.
Well, the shipping was free. And the CD
it always is with the Tin Machine records.
Yeah, the CD I think was $5.
Right, and so the shipping really wasn't. I mean, yeah, the shipping. That means you got the album for what, 50 cents?
I guess it depends on how you look at it.
Good times.
You scored, dude.
That's right. I got me some Tin Machine. It's not as bad as it was made out to be, and I don't care about your cutout thing either, Rudy. I don't.
I know. I let it go, but if you keep pushing, there are some. Can you name a great record you got in the cutout bin? Not a single, not an EP. Great album.
The Laws, self-titled.
What's that?
The Laws, self-titled.
Nice one. I got Neil Young and Crazy Horse, Ragged Glory, a cutout bin purchase. So there you go.
All right. I think you're up, Mr. Flick.
Actually, it's Richard's turn. No, the cutouts just mean that they had trouble selling it, but that doesn't mean that they tried. I'll give you, for instance, on this. One of the best albums ever, right? I'll get back to this because it's something that might come up later. So I'll put a pin in that for now.
Okay.
I gotta say, sorry, on the Laws. The Laws album came out. It was not a huge hit at first, and then There She Goes got in on some movie soundtrack somewhere.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
So I Married
But
an
you,
Axe Murderer.
but you know why it wasn't a hit at first? Because the record company execs dropped the ball.
Yes, and it also didn't have like an obvious second single. I like Timeless Melody a lot, but if you heard Timeless Melody first, you wouldn't necessarily identify that as the same band who did.
No, I know that record really well, and I think it has like a bunch of singles on it, like "Son of a Gun."
Right, but remember, you're an Anglophile, and you think like an Anglophile, and the fact that probably every record on that, every song on there was a single in the UK, I can't argue with you. You are right, but just here in the States, There She Goes would have been probably the extent of. I'll put it this way: I was working at the student radio station at the time, and I got calls for There She Goes all the time. And when I would play Timeless Melody, people would get angry at me. So, what are you gonna do?
I would
It's
say
tough out there.
I would say "Feelin'" is another potential single off of that album, actually.
Anglophiles both.
I'm gonna go with some Diamond Dogs action, which is a really cool record and kind of like the last hurrah for the Spiders from Mars. So even though they're not labeled, and I think a lot of the guys kind of worked piecemeal, you can still hear them, even if a lot of it is offset by the oncoming kind of disco and soul influence that shows up on Young Americans. And I'm going to go with Candidate. And I think that's a handful of tunes on Diamond Dogs are just really eerie and kind of slow burners, and I think give you some sort of information about what David Bowie's 1984 musical would have been like. And he tried to license the property for 1984 by George Orwell as the centerpiece of his new live show, was unsuccessful in getting the rights, and then wrote Diamond Dogs kind of concurrently. And so I feel like you can obviously hear it in, it's not that much of a stretch in the song 1984, right? Like it kind of hands that one to you. But some of the other tunes, you can really feel the vibe of what that may have been. So my pick is Candidate from Diamond Dogs.
All right.
Yeah, I'm surprised Diamond Dogs stayed on the board that long.
Oh no, Rebel.
Oh yeah. You got it.
Diamond Dogs. Okay, and you that was. I'm sorry that. No, you have one more pick.
Oh, I just did V2 Schneider, and then Candidate.
That's some good crosstalk there.
No. V2 Schneider was the last time around, but Candidate was your only pick from this turn.
Oh, then I'm going to take another great tune from the Berlin trilogy, and I'm going to take Always Crashing in the Same Car.
That was on my list.
Yeah, that was on my list, but on an album I've already represented, so I wasn't.
It's totally punk rock and such a cool tune, and I love it.
And his version on the VH1 Storytellers is really good.
I'll have to hear that.
Dig it.
Oh, you know what? That isn't an album I have on my list yet, but I don't. I guess now that Always Crashing is in the Same Car is off, I'm probably not going to represent Low on my list, I guess. All right. That's okay. That's okay because I'm doing just fine. All right. So Ziggy has not been heavily represented as of yet, and that is to my benefit. So I'm going to go ahead and take, and this happens to be one of my, I would say, top 5 Bowie songs easily, and yet I'm getting it with my number 21 pick. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself here. I'm taking Suffragette City.
Yeah, can't argue with that. Yeah, you can't miss. I only have one more requirement. I need to pick just some album. I should just take Diamond Dogs, shouldn't I? I'm not going to. I'm going to take the Gene Genie from Aladdin Sane. And then I'm on all electives at this point, which means I can grab Hop Frog from The Raven by Lou Reed. 2 minutes of dynamite. I've been waiting how long have we been planning the show? I took a big chance letting Hop Frog stay on the draft board this long.
But you didn't even need it. You didn't even need it, though.
No, I didn't. I had to go elsewhere, but again, it's when I think of the Lou Reed David Bowie connection, I always see the RCA Records label, but this is not. This is from the Sire Records era, I believe, from the album The Raven. Although it wasn't even on The Raven, it's only on like the expanded edition of The Raven. I don't know the story of it, but it's fun, which I can't describe a lot of Lou Reed records as. Maybe there's some more fun David Bowie records, but Hop Frog on the Raven reissue, you got to dig it up. I'm so glad I got it.
Well, okay, so you took Gene Genie, and now I'm the only one who has not picked from Aladdin Sane yet, so I definitely got to represent Aladdin Sane. And that's fine that I haven't had a pick yet, because my favorite track from that is Watch That Man, and it's still available. So I'm going with Watch That Man.
Nice.
Didn't you take Panic in Detroit first, Mr. Richard? Yeah, it's a good call.
And
it's a good call.
You know, I can't even. It's Ziggy Stardust after they encounter America. It's so cool.
All right, I think you're up, Mr. Richard.
You're up.
You got it. I'm gonna do. Let's see. We're kind of getting to the end game here, huh?
Yep. If you've got any secret stash, this is the time to bring it out.
Oh, I've got the secret stash, and the secret stash is called Labyrinth.
Wow.
That's as deep as the deep cuts get.
It wasn't threatened.
You know, Labyrinth is. I wouldn't go to bat to say that it holds up. Watching it as an adult, but I think that it's still a totally mind-bending film if you're a kid. And some of the music, I went back to, I think there are probably like 5 vocal David Bowie tracks that are on the soundtrack. And they're really fun. I mean, even when they're not 100% like good, they're still really fun. So I'm going to go with As the World Falls Down, which I think is really interesting. It really has the same like 80s feel as the film, and is a good tune.
Was Jim Henson like a psychonaut? Do you know if he was like a drug user? Was he a stoner?
I think the extent of Jim Henson's drug use was probably just like pot. I don't think he was like too crazy into psilocybin or acid. But if there are any Jim Henson super fans out there that can correct us, we can definitely put together the Jim Henson Mind Trip playlist.
I was a Jim Henson super fan when I was 8 or 9, but that information didn't come into my.
No,
it didn't really at the time. But you know, I don't know. I Jim Henson. This might be a good example of how drugs can be overrated, because you look what you can do and probably not use drugs. I mean, assuming he didn't, but you don't need it.
Very 80s of you. Hey kids, don't do drugs with Jim Henson. I think that's the story.
Well, it's just, to think that creativity is somehow tied to drug use doesn't have to work. In fact, if anything, it probably hinders.
Oh my! You clearly have never listened to an Aerosmith record after they got sober. You wouldn't join a Puff Puff Pass session with Frank Oz and Jim Henson in like 1976? Yeah. I would.
Well, not to go too far down this sidebar, but I mean, I think you look at Aerosmith after they got sober, and that's more a product of how fried they were from all the drug use,
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, look, Night in the Ruts is probably the pinnacle of their drug use, and look how good that is.
Oh, that's not even the full band at that point. You like Dirty Work by the Rolling Stones too, so I'm not asking you these questions about whether Drunk makes records good or not.
Wait, no, don't put that on me. I don't like Dirty Work. Nobody likes Dirty Work.
I gotta be on the sidelines for this one because of Secret Musicians records unions and.
All right. I blackpilled the whole thing, but if you don't watch it, Flick, I am gonna pick Dancing in the Street.
Don't ever accuse me of defending Dirty Work.
Right.
All I ever said about Dirty Work is I think there's a good Keith tune on it.
Okay. Your turn.
It.
No, I'm fine with it. No, we're good. We're cool.
Richard has one more.
Okay, good.
Okay. One more. I'm gonna go with another track from Man Who Sold the World, and I'm gonna do the Superman.
Yeah, good one.
Kind of another dark one that ties into Canada in some ways.
Yeah, that was my backup if I didn't get the title track.
Everybody wins.
That's true.
That's right. All right. Okay, so there isn't much I need to do. I need one more rarity. That's kind of it. I feel like I feel like just I have the luxury of going back and double dipping on a few of my favorites here. And again, Ziggy is Ziggy, so it has to be represented. I'm going to take Moon Age Daydream.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. That was exactly, wow. That's painful, but I admire your choice. Oy.
Yeah, I couldn't leave it out there.
No, you're right. You can't. It would have been a massive failing. In fact, that's kind of where I'm at here. Is like, what do we need to put on here in order to remain credible, at least to ourselves? That has to be on here. All right. Wow. All right. Well, I guess.
There's still deeper to go on Ziggy. I think there's plenty deeper that we could go on it. But
yeah, I'm gonna have to. I wouldn't say Scary Monsters is the equivalent of Ziggy, and I don't want to have more Scary Monsters than Ziggy, but I will just not be able to live with myself if I don't get Up the Hill Backwards on here. I love Up the Hill Backwards. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's a great, just that first side of Scary Monsters. There's nothing on there. I probably should have picked Fashion instead, but we've got the single. We got Ashes to Ashes on there. All right, Up the Hill Backwards, and then I don't know why this one stuck with me, but there was a little companion EP that came out around the time of The Next Day called The Next Day Extra EP, and it has a song on it called Like a Rocket Man, which how does that song get left off the album? It's a good album, and it's probably a little bit out of sync in terms of its vibe, because the album's got a little bit of darkness on it, and Like a Rocket Man's, it's like a pop song, I think. It's fantastic. I don't know why it wasn't a bigger hit, so I'm going to take Up the Hill Backwards, and then from Scary Monsters, and then Like a Rocket Man from the Next Day Extra EP.
Very good.
Okay. All right. I could just go right back to Ziggy, but I
don't do it.
Oh, I mean, there's going to be stuff that is going to be kind of hard to leave on the table here, and it's just going to happen. Again, though, like just some of my favorite, like Moon Age Daydream. Again, take a sip because I'm gonna talk about Mick Ronson again. What Mick Ronson did is so great on Moon Age Daydream, and I'm gonna take Queen Bitch because that's another really great Mick Ronson tune. I gotta take it. So that's I have 2 from Hunky Dory now. I have 2 from Ziggy. I could have 3 from one of them, but that's where I'm at right now.
But nobody's picked Changes, right, from Hunky Dory?
Not yet.
Interesting.
I'm going to Hunky Dory next, so watch out.
It's on you.
Okay. Is it my turn?
Yep.
It is your turn, yep.
I do like Changes. I'm gonna, just for historical perspective, I'm going to pick Andy Warhol.
I can't fault you.
and I think that's such an interesting period of Bowie's life is when he's trying to, he first meets Andy Warhol and puts on the tape of this tune for him, and Andy Warhol doesn't like it, and it just, you kind of feel for David Bowie that he really wants to be like in the factory crowd. He really wants to be liked by Lou Reed, and he wants to be liked by Andy, and he just isn't right away, and maybe isn't ever like really, a ride or die guy with that crowd. But it's a cool
with
tune.
Lou, I think. But when you say with Lou, but not with Andy,
I don't think he was really that close with either guy. I think if any, I mean, you read a lot about him going on like skiing holidays with Paul McCartney and Iggy Pop. Wouldn't you love to be there, right? That'd be cool. But I don't think Lou Reed was ever. I've done some reading about him. I've consumed a lot of the books, and Lou Reed wasn't like really that knowable as a friend, like he could be for a certain amount of time. And Warhol, I know a little about, not as much as Lou Reed or David Bowie, but I think same thing where, you could be in his orbit, you could be part of the same kind of party circuit, but I think the only one that really ended up out of that whole, the trilogy of guys that ended up being a real friend of David Bowie was Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
So yeah, Andy Warhol as a historical talking point.
Can't argue with that.
All right. Well, you have one more.
Yeah, and for that, I'm gonna go back to. Wow, so much to pick from. So many more songs from Labyrinth.
We haven't done Peter and the Wolf yet.
I know. I don't think I'll get to that one. I'm not going to get to the Bing Crosby.
Hey, if we had done this show during the holidays, it would have made the list. It's great. Come on, that's awesome. Yeah.
And but I am going to go back to Aladdin Sane, which is, I think, probably one of my favorite records from the Ziggy and Rano period. And I'm going to go with Drive-In Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? That you defend the honor of the playlist by doing that. It does need to be on there.
Yeah, and it's such a revelation when because I think at least for me, and maybe for some of you guys and some of our listeners out there, it kind of starts with Changes Bowie, and you realize that the album to get is Ziggy Stardust. And then what you don't know immediately if you're just starting out is that there's kind of like Ziggy Stardust Part 2, which is called Aladdin Sane, and is just as filled with as many cool tunes, and is a little bit darker, and is kind of like the after party.
Yeah, it's
for Ziggy.
The after effects of the cocaine are definitely felt on Aladdin Sane as well. I kind of almost have like an alternate take to that, because Aladdin Sane has that cover that is, I think if you're going to say what is the most iconic album cover of David Bowie's career, I think it's definitely the Aladdin Sane album. So my take on it was always that maybe more people had Aladdin Sane because of that cover.
I mean, it's iconic. It's as popular now as it ever was. You know, it's everywhere still now. It's a cultural touchstone on the entire planet.
Yeah, and so I was never sure, what the album sales were on that, but I always, my hunch was always that maybe more people had Aladdin Sane because of that album cover.
Could
Very
be.
likely. Yeah.
Master Flick.
Okay, this is tough now because I'm down to 2 picks and I have so much that I can pick from. This is okay. Huh. All right. Well, I do need to fill one more rarity requirements, and I have three that I could pick. So I might be checking to see, checking the temperature in the room for a bonus round or two if you guys are up for it, because I could keep on going.
Mhm.
Um, so consider that, if you will. Uh, and I don't even know what the most essential rarity goes. I think so. I think about because it's one of my favorite albums ever, and David Bowie played such a huge part in it. I want to take "Lust for Life" by Iggy Pop, which isn't a track that you immediately feel his presence, but when you know what he did behind the scenes on it, you know how important to that he was in that album. Going back to on the first round of picks, I talked about my little diatribe to the engineers of the 1980s in the rock industry and how they didn't know how to, make a drum sound like a drum, like it was forbidden for a drum to sound like a drum sounds. Not the case with Lust for Life. Those drums on the intro to Lust for Life are like the most perfect sounding drums ever. Like that should be the blueprint. That, and as far as the bass drum goes, it should be, like early AC/DC stuff. Or any just about any AC/DC. Like the bass drum always sounds really good on that stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as how a track sounds and how it moves, and Lust for Life is just one of the ultimate tracks to me. It's one of my favorite songs, but it's just one of the best sounding recordings I think ever.
And you can tell
And
they're having fun too.
yeah,
Like,
exactly. The energy is just perfect. It just I don't know how many takes they had to do of it, but they got the absolute perfect take on the album. And one of the best production jobs, and he wrote the music on it. Yeah, so Lust for Life by Iggy Pop is my third rarity.
and if I had to guess, and any of our listeners out there want to do the research, or maybe we can, I'm going to say it's like a take one or a take two, because it just
Yeah.
feels really fun. And yeah, defending it as being included in this, they wrote it together, and you can hear Bowie um, singing the high part on Lust for Life. And it's such a cool part in their story as pals. They're uh, sharing an apartment in Berlin and living like college kids and just eating like cereal for dinner. And the origin story of Lust for Life is bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum, was kind of like the test pattern on West Berlin like public TV. And they were like, oh, and then I think Bowie figured it out on like ukulele or something.
Well, all right. I don't want to hot take this because I know how much you love it, Flick, but it's Motown. It's
It's got that backbeat. Yeah, totally.
it's taken
Right,
from the Diana Ross and the
Yeah,
Supremes.
yeah,
Love.
but
It is
but
the template.
but it's what you do with it, and as far as the production goes, it sounds like the whole album. It's not even just a track, but this is my favorite track from one of my favorite albums, and it everything about it is perfect. Everybody has their influences and the things that they borrow from, but it's what you do with that, and what they did with that was a step forward.
I thought it was a slavish imitation of "You Can't Hurry Love." I will withhold any further comment here.
I wouldn't
Don't
say
pick-
slavish. I wouldn't
Oh,
say slavish.
all right. I feel like if we don't have changes on this list, it's gonna be it's not gonna go well for us. So
We gotta have changes, man.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
put changes from. I don't really like it that much. I did like it until it was used as the excuse for the movie The Breakfast Club, which is a repulsive bit of Gen X self-mythologizing. It would be a better planet had that film not been made, but I can't blame David Bowie for that. But I'm going to put changes on there because I just don't think we can be responsible Bowie playlist generators without changes on it. And I'm going to pick. I I guess it's a rarity. I'm going to pick Velvet Goldmine, which, if I understand correctly, is of the Ziggy vintage. Again, to have a song like Velvet Goldmine that just doesn't fit. It's just it's thrown as a B-side years later. Just shows that he could do no. Him and Neil Young in the '70s could literally do no wrong.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just gonna pick. I'm gonna put Velvet Goldmine on there because it should be on there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. You're totally right. You could not be more right.
I think I'm done. Right. I think that's it for me.
Yeah. Although, again, I'm gonna push for a bonus round or two because
you're gonna get Dancing in the Streets. I'm just telling you, right now.
Well, I guess it's your tendency to blackpill it, but
yes,
it goes.
You're up.
Okay, so I'm gonna go dip back into the rarities because I have so many. So when it turns out that maybe All the Young Dudes wasn't the big hit to my draft that I felt like it was at the time because I have so many more rarities, but I still would have liked to have had it. I am going to take for my last, at least official pick. I'm going to take, and this is my first cover. And is it the first cover anybody's had?
No, I had Waiting when the.
All right.
I had See Emily Play.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. A couple. Okay. So this is my first, but everybody has one. All right. So I'm going to take the duet, or essentially duet. Not exactly. Like a Rolling Stone from Heaven and Hell, the Mick Ronson solo album from I think 1984. Is that right?
It's later. Heaven and Hell, I think, comes out right when Rano already has his cancer diagnosis.
Oh, did it? Okay.
I may be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that it comes later.
Yeah, I'll check that. But anyway, the cover of Like a Rolling Stone with Bowie on the vocals and the I don't know. There should be kind of a nickname like the Glimmer Twins with Bowie and Rano. There should be that sort of nickname. I feel like, but I don't know. I'm not aware of one. Are you aware of one?
No, and I think that there would have been one if Bowie I think was 23 when he made Ziggy and knew Mick Ronson for a few years before and a few years after, and wasn't really in control of all of his business and publishing decisions. I feel like if they would have stayed together longer, and if Mick Ronson would have gotten fair publishing rights, then yeah, maybe it could have been more of a team. But there's the story of the Spiders from Mars being, I think, on either a bus or a plane and talking to Mike Garson, who plays all the really cool piano on Aladdin Sane and a few other records. And Mike Garson is like, man, I'm only making 800 pounds a week. I should ask for a raise. And I think he's talking to Woody. And
that's Woody Woodmansey?
Yeah. And Woody's like, we're only making 50, And so the reason why the Spiders from Mars didn't continue on is a lot of things. Maybe they kind of ran their course and Bowie wanted to move on, and that's part of it. But also, like, those dudes weren't getting paid what they should have been paid.
Right.
So they couldn't pay their rent,
Yeah, because that's what the music business does. They take, they see somebody like David Bowie as the name, and that's all they're really concerned about because they want to be able to sell that name, and then they don't care about any of the Spiders from Mars. And it's when it's a band, they pick one or two people out from the band and say that's the band, and everybody else, the rhythm section or whoever happens to be, those guys end up getting like worse than second class treatment.
So Bowie watched his money pretty close. I mean, he was ahead of his time about a lot of stuff. Like, didn't he like create like a mutual fund or something out of his publishing rights like 20 years before anybody thought of capitalizing on their catalog like that?
Yeah, Bowie bonds. Because he still retained the masters to all of his his back catalog, and at the time was thinking, and this was like late 90s, was thinking about selling them, and he was going to sell them for about $100 million and 110. And so yeah, Bowie bonds, you could temporarily purchase the rights and part of shared earnings for these 25 records with, I'm a medium good financial guy, but they were, it was a thing. And then all the bonds were bought back from their owners in 2007, and Bowie bonds wrapped up business. So really weird stuff. And Bowie Bank was another thing that he did, and him and Prince, their early involvement in putting music on the internet, all sorts of things like. And there's a great quote from him. I think it was from probably around 1995 or so, where I think someone may have asked him, like, what's a rush in capitalizing on your past records? And he's like, well, in about 10 years, like, copyrights aren't really going to exist in the same way, and music consumption is not going to exist in the same way. And I think his quote is like, music is going to be like running water in your house. Like, it's not going to be going down to the record shop.
Wow, he was not wrong.
No, he wasn't. Yeah.
And for a guy who's as into the business end of music, he's put out a lot of reissues and a lot of repackages, but I've never felt like they were a cash-in or a ripoff. Maybe they are a little bit, some of the compilations, the best ofs, but his archival material has been handled pretty well. That Sound and Vision box set was beautiful. It was fantastic. He really did, and a lot of the reissues, even some of the compilations, they're done with love. At least I feel that way. I've never felt ripped off by buying archival stuff from Bowie. I've just never felt. I've always felt like that. It wasn't just a UPC code. It wasn't just product. It was
right, and I think part of it is like he hasn't been that involved in those because he's like Dylan, where he wants to keep moving forward and is not really that interested in rummaging through his archives, and his team around him, especially towards the end of life, is like really solid, like battle tested people that have been through it before. Whereas you have on the opposite side of things, you have help me out with the title, the Lou Reed box set, Between Words and Expression, I believe.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Thought and Expression.
Yeah, there you go. Which was apparently like a really comprehensive and interesting collection of alternate takes, B-sides, and live versions. But Lou Reed swooped in at the last minute and put like 3/4 of the Berlin album on it, and had complete control on it. So not having complete control on your reissues, especially if you're not interested, is I think is maybe what has made them really good.
So is this Richard's last pick?
Yeah, so last at least official pick. We'll have to see if we do a bonus round. And by the way, Heaven and Hell, 94 was the release date, so posthumous release recorded just prior to the death of Mick Ronson.
Okay, thanks for looking that up.
Sure.
And kind of riffing on your last pick, Flick, I'm going to go with The Passenger, which is from the Idiot by Iggy Pop.
Mm-hmm. No, from Lust for Life.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally cool tune. And another great collaboration. Bowie on backing vocals, Berlin vibe, and kind of a Detroit vibe, and love it. Classic.
It rams. All right, I could do one more, and I promise I won't do. Flick, how many do you really need to get out?
I want to get out two, but I have two I got to get out of my system. By the way, I want to just a quick comment on The Passenger, because I don't know. It's just another example. Like, not that I want to I don't want to trash The Idiot. I think it's a fine album and everything, but it just goes. I have to say, Lust for Life is a far superior album. Just and again, it's not to take anything away from The Idiot, but everybody should. This should be standard issue. Lust for Life should be standard issue. It just should.
I don't think a record collection is complete without it. That is for sure.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
Richard, could you do two more if you had to?
Yeah, I've got two more.
All right.
Okay.
Rick, you do your two. I'll do my two. Richard does his two, and we bring it home.
Okay. Well, yeah. Do you want to just do it one by one in order, though, or are you saying do both of them at the same time?
Just do them both at the same time.
All right.
Agreed.
Okay. So anything's on the table since it's a bonus round, right?
Yeah. This is yes.
Okay. All right. So Richard, you go ahead with your two.
You got it. Another cover, but also on Ziggy. It Ain't Easy.
Okay, good one.
Which Kink's tune. And then I don't think anyone has really represented the instrumental tunes from any of his records. So I'm going to go with Warsaw from Low.
Yeah, hard to argue with that.
Yeah, I struggled with that one. I didn't have any of the instrumentals that I really wanted ahead of any of the songs I have on my list, but I think you're right. It's something that needs representation, and it isn't going to happen on my list. I'll just say that.
So Richard completed his draft without a Black Tie White Noise song. Am I correct? And there was no Never Let Me Down Again song? Am I correct?
Yeah. I just,
those are going to have to come from you, I think, Richard. Although you could prove me wrong here, Flick. You could prove me wrong, but I just don't see you dipping into that end of the pool.
No.
Because I'm not from either of those. Those went unrepresented. There's more Tin Machine on here than Black Tie White Noise.
Right. I like, what I like best about
so.
Black Tie White Noise is it's a good album name. And then after that, you're just like, right. I can't get into it.
You know what? I have trivia for that one, though. I forget what the song is, but he does a duet with Albie Shore. And Albie Shore turned down a football scholarship at what school?
Football?
What's that?
Football?
Yeah, he turned down a football scholarship at what college?
University of Iowa?
That's right.
Oh my goodness, I was just guessing.
Yeah, he could have been a football player for Hayden Fry, but he chose another path.
He could have been roommates with Gene Wilder. What a letdown.
Well, no, I don't think that times out quite right.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm not ruling it out.
Maybe Gene Wilder kept an apartment in Iowa City. Who knows? We don't know.
Yeah, that's
we don't know. All right, my first bonus pick is one of my favorites. Velvet Goldmine would go good right now. So it's a good. If you hadn't picked that, I would have taken that.
It had to go. It had to be on the list, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So another. So what would be my second cover? Although everything's on the table right now. Here Today, Gone Tomorrow, which was an Ohio Players song that Bowie covered on David Live. Always been one of my favorites. And I thought sure that it wasn't going to take me a bonus pick to get to it, but it did. And then for my last pick, unless I'm mistaken, nobody has the title track to Diamond Dogs, right?
I was going. Yeah, it's on my. It's right at the cusp there, but I don't have it. I might have gone there, but I'm glad you're doing it.
On mine.
I'm gonna do that right now.
Nice. All right, well, Flick, I really wasn't going to black pill, but you took something from David Live. I was going to do Knock on Wood from David Live, but you got something from that album, so it's been represented.
Yeah, that wouldn't be black pilling.
No. I wasn't gonna have room to black pill, but since David Live is represented, that opens a slot. I didn't pick anything from Heroes, so I'm going to grab Beauty and the Beast so that I have something from Heroes, and then I have one pick left. I'm sorry. I'm just I don't think of myself as hateful, but
Oh,
Uh,
I know where you're going.
yeah,
I
I
know where you're
can't.
going to.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick Dancing in the Street.
Oh,
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
I thought you would have gone with Laughing Gnome.
you know,
You
Laughing
had your
Gnome
chance.
would be better.
Nope. Nope. No. No. I David Bowie is all-time elite cream of the cream, but I can't allow the mythologizing. There are things he touched that did not turn to gold. That video is an offense against humanity. The song is an offense against humanity, and he shouldn't be allowed to get off completely scot-free. It's the last thing on there. No one has to listen to it, but it is going on the playlist. I'm going out
Uh,
with Dancing in the Street. It's also probably his biggest selling record during the EMI era.
yeah, you know what though? Think think about yourself though. Think about the worst thing that you ever did in your life, right? And
I didn't do it on the biggest stage I've ever had.
well, what if you did? What if you happen to have done that on the biggest stage you ever had in your life? And maybe it was good intentioned or whatever, but you did it, and now it's like, you know,
All right,
it's
no. Nobody throwing in with a Mick Jagger solo vehicle is doing the best they can. Like that should be the
well,
biggest red flags in
I
the
wasn't
world.
saying that it was the best he could do, but it's not like he was covering a bad song. He was covering a good song, and you know, I guess that's as far as it went. That's as
There's a
far as
lot. There's a lot worse, and the '80s were what they were.
right.
Look, I didn't go looking in the archives. I bet there's some like instrumental version that's extended like 18 minutes long, or some like half-baked dub that was thrown on the B-side. Like I don't it was a 7-inch single, right? Like what's the B-side? There has to be an even more infernal version of it on the other side. At least I didn't pick that. At least I'm
True.
letting the A-side go on the list.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just okay. So
Tell you
with that in mind, let's come over anything that we can think of that should be on somebody's list somewhere, but didn't make it.
I'm a Dog's getting on there, I think, was a big one. We could have picked anything from Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust pretty easily.
Yeah, well, let's run through what's not. So 5 years, 5 years is a hard song for me to leave off, but there just isn't room at the end of it. We did pretty good with Ziggy though. It is tough to get everything, but yeah, Soul Love, Hang On to Yourself. I think any of those could have been included, but not probably room.
Yeah, I mean, it's more about what song would you not include on that record. I mean, just
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if there is one. I don't think there's a song that
There's no
you
filler on
would
that.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know of a song. Like to me, it's just end to end brilliant. There's nothing on it that I would leave off.
It's a shorter record than because, I mean, if you think about what a cool record is and what a giant piece of mythology for David Bowie and also for rock and roll music. Like I always think of it as being like an hour long, and just like how I think of Rock and Roll Suicide as being like this 6-minute kind of like operatic thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole album's like 34 minutes or something like that, and but yeah, it's all just solid gold.
Yeah, his albums are kind of short in general until it gets to. Unfortunately, it's kind of like the good ones are the short ones, and then the bad ones are the ones that go around the 60-minute mark.
Right, the CD era.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's the way it lays out.
I think Fashion is probably the biggest omission we've got. And again, I admit I'm way over the top about Scary Monsters. But
Yeah, I feel like 5 years is a bigger one, but okay.
that guitar part though, like to get that on the radio, like it took David Bowie to get that just complete just madness. To have the kids buying that, that's an achievement.
I feel like we did really well with Hunky Dory. I feel like that got the representation that it deserves. For me personally, Aladdin Sane, The Prettiest Star is one of my. It's one I would have definitely picked had there been room for it, but didn't get to, and that might just be like a more personal thing for me.
China
No.
Girl? Anyone?
China Girl, not so much for me.
Yeah, not so much for me either.
I feel
Oh,
like the original version, even the original version for me is just like,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's really aged well in terms of like the kind of sensitivity of being
You
like,
wouldn't
oh,
put it out
this is
today,
like
for
a
sure.
Chinese guitar riff, dun, 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 dun. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
and that's just
Yeah,
my
and
opinion of it.
then as far as yeah, I totally agree with everything Richard said, and the only thing I can add to it is it's also the video where we were forced to look at Bowie's butt, which wasn't a good thing to me.
Forced is a strong word. The guitar solo,
Very white butt, very white.
he promised no different.
Okay, on that note.
Look, it was going to come out at some point. David Bowie's white butt is as good a note to end on as any.
Well, okay, but I do have a couple of other ones here. So just kind of in personal interest, the song "Win" from Young Americans, because it's the basis for the Beck song "Deborah," I think is a point of interest for me.
Yeah. Did we get everything from station to station that needed to be done?
Wild as the Wind could have been one, I think. I think we got Low pretty well. I didn't have Low at all, but you know, like the next song that I had on my list for Low was "Be My Wife," which I didn't feel strong enough about to take. And let's see, Lodger, "Look Back in Anger," I think would have been a good.
Yeah, I think we should have gotten that. Boys Keep Swinging, I think.
Boys Keep Swinging. Yeah, definitely was on my list. You know, I didn't have anything from Lodger or Low, so I only had a very small representation of the Berlin trilogy.
You know, I'm going to tell Brian, and he's going to be so mad.
But yeah, I was going to end up with 2 from Iggy Pop, so it just is what it is. That's just how it's got to be.
Yeah, and from Scary Monsters, Kingdom Come, I thought would be what I had to think about whether or not I wanted to take a cover at that point. I definitely wanted the title track more, so it wasn't really going to come into play. And at that time, my 80s was already filled.
It's No Game, I think, would have been defendable, but I think we did the best we could with the time we had allotted.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
so
it's been a David Bowie journey.
Yes,
that's and right.
None of you, I'm the only one who went for anything on Buddha of Suburbia. Is it that bad?
I tried. I really took my research for this seriously, and yeah, I'm a Bowie super fan, but I did have some blind spots. Mainly Buddha of Suburbia and Black Tie White Noise, and just he tried some experiments, but life is too short to really invest too much.
Did anybody have like a small list of albums that they knew that they were probably going to bypass going into this?
Yeah, I think the 90s Reeves Gabriel stuff, like I was there when it was coming out and I was aware of it and I was buying it, but I never liked it as much.
I might not have guessed that Labyrinth was going to make it, but
right. I could have done so much more with Labyrinth. I think all the tunes on that soundtrack record are really playful and cool, and yeah.
Across the Universe might have made it, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't really love that one. I love the original, but I don't love his version of it so much. No, so I went through. I literally did listen to all of these again over the past couple of weeks, at least once, just to make sure that I wasn't forgetting about things. But yeah, even the new pass at Black Tie White Noise, I think that's god awful. That's a bad album. And then Never Let Me Down. Those are my 2 just bottom rung albums, are Never Let Me Down and Black Tie White Noise.
And I think in David Bowie's opinion, in interviews, it was Never Let Me Down and Tonight. And I think if you really want to go to the deepest dark, it's that reggae tune on Tonight.
Yeah, but I do agree with you on loving the Alien, although to me it took the live version of it to appreciate it more. And I do like Blue Jean, that's why I picked it. So at least tonight gives me a couple of songs that I like, and the other two don't give me anything.
Well, I think we've been more than generous in giving those albums a spin, and we found some gold.
Like, let's just be honest. There are some people who like a few David Bowie songs, or there are some people who might like a few David Bowie albums. I think the three of us all just like David Bowie. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's a different. That's how I feel about Prince. Some people like some Prince songs. Some people like some Prince albums. I just like Prince. I'll listen to anything with the name Prince on it. I'll listen to anything with the name David Bowie on it. And he gets the benefit of the doubt from me. And for 20 years he needed it. But going back, it's.
Well, not quite 20. I wouldn't say
15. But even then, you can go back and there was some duds there where he was making stuff that wasn't great, that late 80s stuff. But I don't think you could even say that he wasn't trying. Maybe he wasn't trying what he should have been trying, but he was trying. You know what I mean? I don't think he was ever. He never phoned anything in. I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go back to Tin Machine. You're gonna force me to go back to Tin Machine.
It always is.
I do think that stuff is underrated. I'm not saying it's great, but it doesn't deserve the rep that it has. I think that's kind of the I don't want to call it like the oasis or the beacon of that time, but compared to what's around it, maybe it is.
Okay.
All right, Richard, thank you so much. You really, I think if we are able to persuade people outside of our little clique here that we have Bowie cred, it's going to be largely on the back of your pick. So
thank you so much. But yeah, you guys had some great trivia, some good deep cuts, and thank you for having me. And January 8th is David Bowie's birthday, January 8th, 1947. David Robert Jones, rest in peace.
That's right.
Maybe we should bring Richard back for the Lou Reed draft. I feel like he adds some gravitas to the drafting.
You up for that one?
I love hanging out with you guys, so anytime.
We're there.
Okay.
All right, I don't know. We haven't picked a topic for episode 69, and I'm always going to be.
I would say Serge Gainsbourg.
I don't know. An hour on that, maybe. I do love that reggae Flying Robbie record he made, the Serge Gainsbourg in dub. That's a fantastic album. But anyway.
He had a dub period, which is kind of worth looking into.
I'll agree.
Okay, with that, guys, it's
appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Richard.
Until next time.
See you next week.